Hi everyone. Before we start the presentation of Phil Nash, I just wanted to announce to you that Phil Nash had apparently had birthday yesterday. So we weren't there, but we are here, and it's like one day, only one day after the birthday. So if you could actually join me and sing happy birthday for him.
And by the end of the song, I should be out in the car park somewhere, running as fast as possible.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Phil. Happy birthday to you.
You're all too kind. Well, I guess that's one way to get a talk started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for singing. You all sound so beautiful after lunch, after getting started with this conference. As we kind of said, my name's Phil Nash, and I'm a developer evangelist for a company called Twilio. Does anybody know who Twilio are? Have you used them before at all? Anybody? Few people? Okay, cool. That means I get to tell the people who didn't put their hands up. So Twilio is a it's a communications platform for you as developers to add communications into your projects, into your applications via voice, video, or messaging using the tools, languages, or frameworks that you already know. I'm not here to talk about Twilio, but we might see a bit of that as part of my demos later. But I am very excited to be here in Krakow, not least because on Sunday when I arrived, there was a march of sausage dogs through the town, apparently, which I think any town that has anything like that going on is clearly the best place in the world. I was only sad I missed it due to the fact that I have my own sausage dog. This is Ruby. She is tucked up in bed there, very disappointed she didn't get to march through any nice places as well. That is the largest screen I've ever seen my slides on, and therefore also that's the largest I've ever seen her. She's only obviously this big, really, in real life. But let's get on with the actual thing. Let's get on with an introduction to service workers. Because I've got a very quick introduction for you. It's very simple. Service workers are scripts, JavaScripts, that intercept network requests so that web developers like ourselves can treat the network as an enhancement and provide offline experiences for users of web applications. Sounds pretty good, right? Let's get on with looking at dog photos then. No, all right. We have a slightly longer introduction to service workers as well, and I hope this kind of helps you understand why I believe they're a good thing and why I'm super excited. And it all starts with this guy, the XMLHttpRequest request. I think the service worker is the most important thing to arrive in the browser since this. And it doesn't even have the terrible API to go along with it, or the very weird capitalization. Like, why is TTP not capital as well? This is all an acronym. It doesn't make any sense. But that's OK, because we don't have to worry about that anymore. We have the fetch API to deal with. And that is all part of the service worker spec. I believe the service worker is the most important thing because of this, because it changes the way we get to build applications. And before we had XMLHttpRequest, we didn't have the idea of a dynamic application, unless, of course, you were building things in a frame set, which was obviously an awful idea. That time when the Outlook engineers for Microsoft Outlook Online turned to the Internet Explorer engineers and said, listen, we need to update things without having to refresh the whole page. When this was born, was a brilliant turning point for the web. And to me, service workers is that turning point again. And I believe that also in the future, we will wonder how we coped and how we built modern and reasonable applications without service worker. So let's go into a bit of a history for it, because this is not this is not an old API, of course, and it's also not the first time we've been able to make websites work offline. Does anybody remember the application cache? Nobody. Cool. So nobody had the pain of one person. One person. Did you try and build anything with it? Was it awful? Yeah, right, it was awful. Cool. I mean, it seemed like a nice idea, a declarative way of saying, these are the things I would like to work when the browser can't reach the network. Except that's not quite how it worked, because it broke everything when you installed even a blank manifest. And it needed things like changing a comment in order to reload all your assets on the page, and all sorts of just terrible things. And so many people believe this, most of all, Jake Archibald of Google, who has famously many times said, written down, and presented that the application cache is a douchebag. And many people agreed with him. People who attempted to build offline applications agreed with him. And so in early 2014, the service worker spec was started by Jake and by Alex Russell, also at Google. And that is a link to the spec if you ever want to go and read it. It is ever evolving, which is always good as well. And then in 2015, early 2015, January of 2015, it dropped into browsers for the first time, available from outside of Flag, so available to users for the first time. And that was in Chrome 40 and Opera 27. And then we've gained support for service worker since in the start of this year in Firefox version 44. And we also have support for it in this fancy new browser icon, which is Samsung Internet. It's kind of new on the scene, but since it's the default browser for Samsung devices on Android, it now takes up about 10% of mobile traffic. So it's worth thinking of and testing with if you have a Samsung device. Obviously, there's some missing logos here, your favorites and mine. What's happening? What's happening here? What's really exciting is that this is moving onwards. And in Edge, now obviously there is no support for this in Internet Explorer. We can just move on from that. But in the Edge browser, this is actually in their latest preview. There is support for service workers, support for push notifications, support for things I'm going to talk about, available in Edge preview. So it should be coming to users soon, which is, I'm excited. In Safari at Apple, it's under consideration. They are thinking about it. I mean, that's a good thing as well, right? It's not that they've thought about it and they've cancelled the idea. They are actually actively thinking about it. They're attending meetings about it. And this is the kind of thing that may well happen. iOS 10 was released yesterday, and I saw no support for it in there. So we're not happening anytime soon, but it's possibly coming. And Apple do have, they have a history of supporting offline applications, as the application cache itself is supported in iOS and Safari on the desktop. So what does it really do? Let's see some code, I guess. You install a service worker. It's a piece of JavaScript that is going to run outside the context of your page. So you need to install it from somewhere, from within a page, and then it will be able to take over things. So you install it like this by registering and calling it to bringing the file in. And that you can give a scope to as well. So you can have service workers work on different parts of your site, scoped to the path name. And so this will work only on any path starting with /admin. If you don't scope it, then it will work at the level at which the service worker itself is served from. So in this particular case, from the root. And it works with promises. It loves promises. There's promises all over service workers. If you're still a lover of callbacks, you're going to be very disappointed in this API because it is promises all the way. And so if the service worker installs correctly, then you receive the promise is fulfilled, everyone's happy. And if not, then you get to catch it and work out what went wrong. And most importantly, because the service worker should be a bit of an enhancement at this point, your website should continue to work as it was before, or work for anybody who doesn't have service worker support in their browser. And then within the service worker, you just listen for events. And this is the fetch event, which is triggered every time your page, any page on your site within the scope of the service worker registration, requests any URL. And that can be a local URL to the same site, or any remote URL as well. So we can get in the middle of everything here, which is actually quite exciting. So it's a proxy, effectively, that you're in control of. And that might get you a little bit worried. Because it's a proxy that if somebody else were to get in control of, you'd never see a user on your site again, because they could just serve up entirely different pages. But thankfully, the browser vendors and Jake Archibald and Alex Russell thought about this kind of thing, and this is part of a push for the whole web to go on and use HTTPS to have secure origins for all of our sites. And a service worker will not work off of a site using that's not on HTTPS. If that worries you because you've had to deal with setting up certificates and things in the past and they are horrible, I encourage you to check out the Let's Encrypt project, which makes things a lot easier and gives you certificates for free. So easier to use and free. I'm pretty happy with that. For development purposes, localhost is deemed a secure origin, so we don't have to worry about setting up sets on our own machines, so that's nice. And I wanted to just show you how this actually does work in real life. So I'm going to run out to this little demo page, which is a single page application. Not one of those fancy JavaScript single page applications, I just mean it has one page. It's this one. And it is being served up from here. So if I kill that server right now and refresh the page, I get this site, the site can't be reached, the server's offline. I don't have the dinosaur game right now because this is just a local thing. But this is effectively the same as the site not being online. So I'm just going to start that back up again, refresh the page, and we got that. Cool. Let's make this work offline then. This is that page. Hello Dev Day. It is just a default Bootstrap theme because I'm not very good at designing or making things, but I wanted to show something very simple. So let's install that service worker as we saw before. If you were doing this for real, you probably would want to do some kind of like if service worker is in Navigator, but I know it is in this browser, so I'm just going to forget that for now. And it is registered at SWJS, and then let's build up our promise functions as well. So if that works, we're just going to log yay, because who doesn't want to see live demos work? And if it doesn't work, then we'll mention that to ourselves with the error as well. And as I said, it won't work offline, but it will continue to work as we expect. A normal site to work. So once we've done that, we need to build the service worker itself. And I showed you the fetch event earlier, but first we want to deal with something a little bit earlier in the life cycle of the service worker, which is its install event. And this is what happens when a service worker is first loaded onto the page by that register function. And we get an event here. And at this point, we get a few extra things with our JavaScript events that we don't normally see. And this is an important one. It's wait until. Wait until. So service workers, because they run in the background, because they're not part of a live page, can be killed at any time by the browser when they're not needed. That's a good thing. It keeps our battery usage low and other stuff like that. But when we're actually trying to do things, it's much better for it to stay awake and do that. And that's what event.waitUntil does. It waits until the thing we're trying to do is finished with, and then says, OK, you can kill the service worker now. In that, we return a promise. And when the promise resolves in any way, that is when wait until will be over. And for this, we're actually going to use another fairly new API, the caches API. And we're going to use that to open a cache, in this case, one called devday. Now, caches.open returns a promise, so that's a good start. And when that promise resolves, we get that cache. And what we're going to do is add into that cache all the files we want to be able to use offline. So we're going to use cache.addAll. There is also cache.add for single files, but cache.addAll takes a list and will only resolve if they all successfully enter the cache. If they don't resolve successfully, this promise will kick out. Event.waitUntil will catch that and eventually say that the install event did not succeed, and we'll get the catch in the registration on the actual page. So if I just put those in there, that's good. And we need to do only one other thing, which is deal with that fetch event, because we're putting things into a cache, but we need to get them back out again. So we're going to add event listener for fetch in this case. And when that event happens, we need to do another thing with our event. In this case, we want to respond with. Again, this is going to wait for things to happen, because we can enter one of two things here. Either a response object, and that you can build up out of anything. This is the most useless one. It will just respond with the text hello. So let's not use that. Let's actually go back into our cache and get things out of there. So we're going to open that up, and we're going to check for items in that cache that match our incoming request. And because this site only makes 2 requests, one is for the index.html and the other is for app.css, that's all we need to do right now. This is a fairly straightforward service worker example, but we should see when I reload the page. So over on the right-hand side, I've got DevTools open, and we should see in the console we've got a yay, which is good news. And if we look at application, we can check out our service workers, and this is our installed service worker over there. And so it means I can continue to refresh the page, but if I kill the server now and hit refresh, we continue to have the website because we are serving it directly from our cache using our service worker. That cache is there, that just lists our files. But that is our very first service worker. I'm quite excited that it all worked. So that is all offline now. Good. Let's go back to the slides then. So why would you want to do this? Why do we want to be able to cache things offline? Why do we want to be able to respond to network requests before even asking the server for something? And for me, this is a little bit of an argument of web versus native application development. This is an argument that many people have in many different guises. And the way I want to present it to you today is in two ways. Because the web has always had a bit of an issue in that it's online by default. You have to be connected to the internet in order to visit websites. Seems fairly straightforward, I guess, but that doesn't always work. We are actually very fortunate enough at this conference to have some excellent Wi-Fi. It seems to be working beautifully, but if you've been to other conferences, if you've been on trains, if you've gone through tunnels, if you go to other countries, web applications are just going to stop working because you can't reach the network. Whereas native applications have the variability to be offline by default. Once you have installed a native application from an application store, then you have all the files you need in order to run that application. Now, it's obviously possible to build a native application that doesn't work offline at all, that can crash or that might just show you a blank screen. But that is absolutely the fault of the application developer themselves and not the fault of the platform. In the web, until we've had this support for offline apps, online by default is the only way we've been able to build. On the other hand, the web has discoverability. It has the link, the URL. It is the best way to share things. It's the best way to discover things, and really has been the power since the very first browser that was built, the very first documents that were put online. That ability to navigate, to surf the web, as they used to call it, has always been the greatest power. Because native applications, they might work well, they might work offline, but wow, is it the worst installation process ever? If you're trying to achieve something on a mobile site and it suggests that maybe you download the mobile application instead, and you're maybe even halfway through trying to achieve that thing, once you've gone through maybe linking to the App Store, finding the app, downloading it, however many megabytes of app it is, opening it for the first time, and it now, and trying to continue with that process, the thing you were trying to do, the app has no idea who you are, no idea what you were trying to do, and you might as well just go back to the mobile site, close that horrible pop-up that came up to suggest this app to you, and get on with your day. It's just an awful thing. And so if we can combine the ability for applications to work well offline and give good experiences when there is a bad or non-existent network connection, then we can change that failure of the web to be offline first, to work by default, and have all the shareability, the linkability that we've always relied upon and used in the web. And that's why I think this is important. But service workers aren't just about that. That's what excites me more about them, because if you don't care for offline, if you're like my app, I've got a blog, it doesn't, whatever, it's not going to work. There are other reasons to use them. First of all, performance. And this is a hugely important thing. There was a report released, I think, today by Google, which suggested that the average website, or 90% of websites, take 30 seconds or so, maybe it's 13. I've only read it kind of on Twitter as I've been going through the day, but a ridiculously long time for most mobile sites to respond and load in somebody's browser. The other side of that report said that 50% of people will leave after 3 seconds of loading. So performance is hugely important and something we continually need to adapt for on the web. But when you have the ability to put things into a cache that you have control over, not worry about whether the browser's HTTP cache is doing its job, performance can be put back into your hands. There are other better ways of dealing with it as well. The kind of application shell architecture in which you cache the kind of shell of your application as HTML and load that straight from the cache in the service worker and fill it in with your data afterwards means that we can get pages to the screen, to the user's eyes much quicker and improve on the perceived performance of our applications just using the service worker. But then, of course, there's fallbacks as well. Like, I mentioned that we didn't see the dinosaur game in Chrome earlier, but that's our fallback for if somebody's offline. They completely drop out of our application and the thing they're trying to use, and they're given a fun but ultimately pointless game. However, we could keep users in our experience, in the experience of our application, and allow them to continue on either working or at least continuing the experience. And one of the best examples of this that I've got is the Guardian website, in which the developers worked on another game actually to play whilst in an offline state. And if you go to the Guardian and you end up offline, they'll tell, okay, you're offline, we're unable to connect to the internet, but how about a crossword? And I think this is great. My kind of feeling of this one is if you are kind of if you're commuting, perhaps on a train, it's an awful idea, really. But if you're on a train, you're reading The Guardian, and you go through a tunnel and you become offline, you can't go to any other app. You can't go to do other things because you are offline. Maybe you can go play Candy Crush or something. But in this particular case, they give you something to do whilst you're waiting and whilst you can allow you to carry on doing what you're doing once you regain that network connection. I think it's a really useful use case. And then there's the other exciting things that stop thinking about things like the Cache API anymore. Push notifications are absolutely huge for the web. It's something that native platforms have had for such a long time, and it enables app developers and businesses to re-engage users with timely notifications, things that people care and want about. Otherwise, they will block your notifications. But if you give people things they care about, then you can work really well with them. I have a little demo of this working right now. So I'm just going to go over here. So this is my other application that I've been building at the moment. It's just an SMS application. It wraps around a Twilio number. And what I wanted to do was build notifications for it, because that makes sense. You want to get notifications when you receive an SMS message. So if I enable notifications, that is the tiniest little window up there. But that is the permissions window to say, would you like to show notifications for this website? If I allow that, things are going to work. And then what I can do is basically close that brilliantly. I'll close the entire window. I don't have any other tabs for Chrome open right now. But that is closed. I'm not currently visiting that site. And if I text it, if I could spell, what we should see, and it's probably going to be another tiny little window given the size of the resolution of the screen, is a little notification pop up in the absolute top right over there. That's utterly ridiculous, isn't it? And that is the message I just sent. And if I can go to that, I can click on it, and it will reopen back into the page so I can go and see the message I just sent myself. Hello, Dev Day. So that is push notifications to the web. I think it's huge, and they are improving all the time. My one is not a particularly pretty notification, but you can add images and logos to it and have it do other things when you click on it as well. So we'll go back to here. This has slightly different support to all of service workers. It didn't come in that first version of Chrome that gave support for it, but it did arrive in Chrome 42. Did drop in the first version of Firefox 44 that had service worker support. It didn't drop into Opera until version 37, and it is live in Samsung version 4, which is the only one that supports service workers as well. But as I say, with great power does come great responsibility. If you spam your users with notifications, if on the first visit to your application you instantly pop up a, would you like to receive notifications from this site, people are going to close it and leave. And also, within any of those pop-ups that do appear, in Firefox and in Chrome certainly, there is a settings option within the notification itself that allows people to opt out from push notifications from your site directly within the notification itself. So you have to make sure that that you treat your user well with these. Background sync, I also think, is hugely exciting for the web. This allows us to, in applications where a user maybe wants to perform an action, wants to send a message, say in the case of my SMS application, and they don't care how good or bad their internet connection is, they just want to make that thing happen and then get on with their day, put the phone back in their pocket even. Background sync makes that possible. I want to show you a demo of that one as well, because this works in my SMS app here as well. I'm just going to drag in my phone, which is connected up there. And then I'm just going to turn the Wi-Fi off. Cool. I don't have any other connection. These wires are all for other things. I am offline. In fact, we can just kind of prove that by trying to go to Facebook. We get the dinosaur. Let's get rid of him. I heard him called the Downosaur the other day. I thought that was good. But if I send a message back to myself from offline, my application can kind of say, yeah, that's sent. Fine, it's on its way. Maybe it's in an outbox somewhere. I'm not the best UI designer. I should probably have an outbox in here. But obviously it hasn't come through yet. That's fine. We didn't expect it to. We are offline. This can't possibly have worked yet. But when we turn it on, what's happened in the background is we registered for a sync event in the browser, and then it goes back online. The sync event is triggered in the service worker, and we can carry on and do the work we wanted to do originally. And as you see, the message has come through. This is offline. So I think that's really exciting. This uses IndexedDB as well. So if you were in Gil's talk earlier, very useful thing to have because it works. It works in the service worker, and so in this particular case, we stuffed the message into IndexedDB in the browser, and then in the service worker, it reached in and got all the messages out and sent all the ones it was intending to send. And that is background sync, and I'm hugely excited by that one. However, it does have slightly lacking support. Only Chrome 49 and above supports background sync, which is kind of a shame, I guess. Then there's geofencing, which sounds like a great idea. I'd love the idea that the service worker itself could receive events when you walk into particular geolocated areas. However, this was talked about very early on in service workers, but it kind of went quiet around the middle of last year. So the spec has kind of gone a bit quiet. No one's talking about it. I'd like to see that kind of thing happen. Perhaps, again, it's a battery concern and things like that, particularly for mobile browsers. But I'd like to see it happen maybe one time. This all ends up leading on to the idea of progressive web apps, though. Has anybody heard this term before, progressive web apps? Not many. Okay, so yeah. So this is something that Google are actually pushing fairly hard right now, as it's built very well into Android. In Chrome, Opera on Android does this. Samsung on Android does the Samsung browser does this. And the idea is that if you have a combination of basically three things: a service worker and some kind of offline support. And that will include, of course, it having to be served over HTTPS and a secure origin. If you use a manifest.json with a few particular keys that give the app a logo and a name, and if you have some kind of user engagement, and this is something that the browsers themselves are tweaking and changing, so as long as you have an engaging app and you have users returning to use it, you have what they think is a progressive web app. And then you get an app install banner, the most exciting thing every marketing team has ever wanted to hear. And I don't have an example of that, mainly because I don't currently have an Android device to show you on. So here's a screenshot. The idea being that once you hit that threshold of user engagement and you have the other things in place, the browser can say, hey, you're using this app. Would you like to add it to your home screen? Would you like it to be an application on your phone? And this adds that kind of level of trust with users. They're going to trust that this is going to work offline because not too many people are likely to enter a URL into a browser when they're not online, expecting it to work. And we get, the icon on the home screen. that's maybe not the most exciting part of it, really. I think the rest of it, that kind of improved experience for users, their ability to use the site in terms of good connectivity, poor connectivity, or no connectivity. And it's just superbly exciting for me. So, obviously, once you've got the icon on the home screen, you have all of that, and profit, I guess. But that's kind of service workers for me. It's a progressive enhancement. It is something that is not going to work in every browser because it's not supported in some of those main logos and main browsers that we expect things like this to be in. But the only thing that we get, the thing we get out of a service worker is this offline ability, but it's an enhancement. If a service worker can't be installed, then it should, your site should continue to work as it did before. And I think that's just exactly how all of the web should work. And so this was kind of my introduction to service workers. And I said at the start that service workers are scripts that intercept network requests so that web developers can treat the network as an enhancement and provide offline experiences for users of web applications. But in thinking about it, as I've been kind of going over this talk in my mind many times, I don't think offline is actually the important part of this sentence, even though I had it highlighted before. But when we give users an experience regardless of their network connectivity, when we're able to send them push notifications in order to get them back involved in an application for a good reason, when they're able to use things like background sync to perform tasks without worrying about that connectivity, then we just provide better experiences for users of our web applications. And that really is the key, I think, to service workers. Of course, and in the future, I think we'll wonder how we coped without them to build modern web applications. But if you're not yet entirely convinced by all of that, I have one last thing in the bag. This is not built by me. This is built by the team at Udacity, who run a great course on offline capable web applications. But I think you'll find it's fairly compelling.
For too long, users have been left staring at a white screen. For too long, they've been let down by the cruel seas of network connectivity. And for too long, we've been powerless to help. We've been left waiting. But no longer. A new browser feature has arrived. A total game changer. A feature that lets you control the network rather than letting the network control you. Who is this new feature? And what promises does it bring? Introducing the service worker.
So, I'm pretty excited about a web API now. How about you? I guess that's kind of what happens, I think, when you let a team of Americans get hold of a feature like that. And I think every sorry to any Americans in the audience. I think every browser feature in the future deserves a trailer like that, and we should all be made to sit in cinemas and watch it. But that's the service worker. It's a supremely exciting web API to me. It's been around for a little while. It's available in so many of the browsers that you use today, and I'd really love if you tried it out or if you had any questions. But thank you very much for coming this afternoon. Thank you. And we have a microphone. If anybody does have any questions, just wave an arm in the air. And there we go, one right there. Microphone is on the way.
One. Okay. I have a question. What happens with service worker when we close the web page? It's still working?
So when you close the page, it continues to work. If you were to completely close the browser on the desktop, then it's not going to work. But then the browser's not making any requests at that point. That's mostly important in terms of the push notifications. However, because if you send a push notification but there is no browser there ready to receive it, you're not going to get that notification. However, on Android, you can close the browser entirely. And because it uses Google's cloud messaging, or now Firebase Cloud Messaging as the way to push it, which is integrated into Android itself. If you send a push notification to a browser like that, then it will wake the browser up, wake the service worker up, and you will receive the notification. So it sort of works when you close the browser.
Okay, I have another.
Yeah, sure.
So I, as right, understand the web page installs on our PC, the web service, right?
Yes.
So is it possible that another web page can connect to that web service?
Oh, so the another page connect to your service worker?
Yeah.
Not yet. So this is actually a feature they call foreign fetch, and it's being worked upon right now. The idea that other pages making requests to things that your service worker has control over. It's being worked on, it's being spec'd out, so it doesn't work right now, but it is in the pipeline for a future kind of release of this. So have a look for foreign fetch. I think if you search for that, then you'll find out the latest on it. Okay. Anybody else with a question at all? If you're up the back and waving, I can't see because of the lights, but you're not. So there's no questions. Well, in that case, we have one there. Thank you.
How does this cope with private and incognito modes?
The
service workers, do they cope?
Oh, incognito mode. That's a really good question. Let's try it out. Let's get ourselves an incognito mode of my localhost 3000 is the one. No, it's 8000. Sorry, we've got two different localhost things running here. So that is not online right now. Brilliant. There we are. So if we bring up that offline page that was there in incognito mode, I don't know, what are we expecting to see here, right? Should I be able to... So we have the service worker installed now in incognito mode. That's there, number 0, as you can see. If we were to kill the server at this point, then the service worker continues to work. But I guess if we reopen a new incognito and try and go to our offline page, it won't be there. So everything is cleared out at the end of your incognito session. Cool. I'm kind of glad that all worked. It's yeah, but you know, it's going to remain in my existing non-incognito session, so that is still working even though the server's been killed in my original browser session. Cool. Any other questions at all? That really was the last one then. Okay, cool. I guess it's either time for a coffee break or another talk, but thank you so much for coming this afternoon. Again, my name's Phil Nash. Find me online if you have any other questions, and I will post the slides for this later as well, which has a load of links in for you to learn more. Thank you very much.